I think it's a priority for the student union. It builds a sense of community within our faculty. So by doing this, I think it will create a safe place for people to go, and I think it will create income for the university as well. So all around, I think it will be a good idea.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? You say income for the university, and I know not everyone's had a chance to respond yet, but who do you think should run the bar? Do you think that should be the students' union or the university?
I think a mix of the two. So I think because it's a student thing, I suppose the student union should, because then it comes more income for the students as well. But maybe it's a discussion to be had between the two of them to see where.
Blessing.
Like following on from that question, I think a good example is Chelmsford, because they have 92 and it's run by the students' union, and they can employ student staff and affordable and pay rates as well. So I think if it's run by the SU, then it will be directly for students, especially because with food as well. Students are really worried about prices. And in general, like what everyone said is really good, because of the bar, there's so much you can do with it. Students would like to have a permanent space that they can go to, hold events, societies, and I know the university would be interested in holding student events there as well. So it would benefit both the university and students.
Alex, did you want to join in?
Yes, I agree. I agree very much with this being run by students. I think it's important that the students have a say in what they do and basically run the bar. So I think I agree with it, yes.
Yeah, we're just going to pause just for a second. I think we're going to sort out some microphone issues very quickly, and then we'll move on to the next question. Thank you everyone for bearing with us as we work through our technical difficulties. Hopefully everything is smooth running now. If it's not, just leave a comment and we'll be able to sort out the problem. I'm going to do a briefer intro than I did earlier, but once again, welcome to the big candidate debate. We're currently sitting with our candidates for the Vice President role for Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences. I'm just going to have them introduce themselves again, and that way you will be able to learn their names, who they are, and then we'll get into the next question.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a master's student in creative writing.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm the current Vice President for Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences.
Hi, I'm Blessing, and I'm a third-year graphic design student.
Hi, I'm Neve. I'm a third-year film and media student, pronouns she, her.
Hiya, I'm Molly Richardson. I'm a third-year sociology student.
Hi, Tom McNamara, writing and English literature student, and I know what to do with this microphone now.
Fantastic. Right, I'm going to get into our second question. If we have time, we will revisit the first so you guys can hear the great answers that our candidates provided. So candidates, our next question. Students often feedback about classroom disruption. This could include students showing up late, being loud, being on their phones, or generally having bad behaviour. What would you do if the university asked us to support them on a campaign to tackle this? Go ahead.
I totally agree, but I must say I haven't noticed bad behavior. There's a lot of noise sometimes in the corridors in my faculty, and you can also hear the sounds, and we go back to the first question where you're talking about a bar for students. Because we have limited access to premises at the moment, you can hear a lot of the music in the evenings that goes on, and it sort of goes through to the classroom. So a campaign, yes, I would say, but I would say both. Not so much just the students and the way how they behave, but also where do we sort of move the sound into somewhere else, and that I think the answer would be a bar, for example. I think it would be a good idea.
Thank you. Anyone else ready to jump in?
I kind of agree with Alex's point about noise pollution, especially outside the classroom seeping in. I think it's mainly because of the facilities around the uni that kind of make it so a lot of the rooms aren't fully soundproof to outside noise. But as well as students in the classroom, I think it differs maybe depending on faculty or class size, and especially the topic of what the actual lesson's about. In a lot of lessons, teachers want you to get involved and want you to talk to each other, but then in certain lessons they're like, hey, we don't want you, we want you to be quiet the entire time. So I think it's probably students and teachers need to have a level of respect for each other. If students feel respect for their lecturer, then they will respect them by not having their phones out or by giving them their full attention. But if they feel they're in a class where they're not really being, or their opinion doesn't matter, or what they're learning is something they're not interested in, they're not really going to respect the class and just do what the hell they want.
I kind of think it's a mixed approach. So I think the Students' Union and the tutors should get involved and speak together. So maybe if this issue is tackled head on from the beginning of when people first start their degrees, it's less likely to continue on throughout. But again, it has been noticed, even in my lectures, there has been people when they're waiting outside, they're quite loud. So I think it's just more the fact of maybe more signposting and just being a bit more to remind people there are lessons quieten down a bit. But I completely agree with Alex that the bar would offer that place of relaxation, and even just going to get food before lectures with your friends, it directs the noise into other parts of the university. And as well, I think as well, being a campus, being quite a small campus, compared to such as University of Lincoln, they have such a big campus. We need to direct the noise and the general student body to a certain place that is fun and enjoyable.
Thanks. I do agree with all those points, definitely. Once again, the bar would be a great place for the students to hang out and divert a lot of people in the corridors that are just talking, because we understand they got seminars to be for, they they want lectures, but the thing is, at the moment they don't. Sorry, just trying to find the right words for this. At the moment, they can't. They do want this bar, and I feel like for noise pollution, yeah, the campaign for it, I'd say I would have like. I'd say if both students and seminar leaders coming together would definitely make a stronger opinion about it and direct it to us. But also something that kind of concerns me is outside noise that is not quite as easy to control. Like I remember for one of my seminar rooms, we were stationed up in the COSLIP building and there was construction outside. The seminar leader was trying to speak and I was always like, every 5 minutes. I think another thing that would be helpful would be also petitioning to the student union, like if a room needs to be changed and just helping organize that change. So even if it's outside noise that can't necessarily be controlled by students, then we can also help with that as well.
I think for the campaign to work, it has to be student focused because not that I have anything against lecturers, but sometimes they might not. What's the right word? Yeah, because there's some things that students get on a student level, and like first, like talking to students, like what if they have any issues with their course or how it's taught. What's the issue? Sorry. Do they have any problems with like how it's taught? Is there any issues with the lecturers? And then also like both of them meeting halfway as well, because if lecturers have problems that are really valid, then like addressing it with students, like, oh, how can we change things? Like, how can we change the approach to the sessions or like seminars or lectures to make them more appealing to students? And also because it's like a really like multifaceted sort of thing, because like on one hand it's about like the quality of teaching, also like how students feel about the lectures, and also about space as well. Like because if there is more student space, then that would mean they'd have more, like they'd have an area where they can have fun and be relaxed, and they won't be impeding on other people that are having their sessions. But I think it's worth like teachers and students working together, and also the SU listening to students if they have any issues, because sometimes they might act a certain way, but there's actually like a deeper issue that needs to be addressed.
We'll give Amanda a chance to speak, and then I'll ask a follow-up question if that's all right.
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, so the question is that students often feedback about classroom disruption, and there were a few examples, including showing up late, being loud, or on their phones. And what would you do if the university asked us to support them with a campaign to tackle this?
I think firstly we'd obviously have to have like a student consultation, just to sort of get the opinion from students, what they think about this. I then think that we'd then have to take that feedback to relevant people in the faculty, whether that was module leaders dealing with that, or the deputy dean, or whoever. I think that it's something that's going to be very different across faculties. Obviously, for SFE, they have courses all in one sort of lab room, whereas predominantly for our faculty, you're typically just with your own module, your own course. You're not having to do sort of experiments or anything like that in the same room, where you're more likely to get more noise, whereas as far as I'm aware, for the majority of courses within our own faculty, there isn't as much disruption. So I think that the approach would be very different depending on faculty. And yeah, I agree with what has been said previously as well.
So it sounds like the majority of you would be interested in working with the university, working with lecturers, finding opportunities for space for noise to go to, if possible. I suppose one thing that we might consider is what would happen for students who are being disciplined via a campaign such as this. So what happens to the students who are being held to account for the noise and disruption? And do you think the Students' Union is still in a place to support the campaign if they're endorsing any kind of disciplinary measures?
I think with one of the like one of the issues that's been brought up with students showing up late. I feel like certain students you can't really discipline for them for that, especially if they live far away or if they have issues coming in some days. Maybe they're parents and they have children and then they get in a bit like 5 minutes late, and even though this is minor disruption, they're quiet for the rest of the lesson and they get stuff done. So I think that's one thing we should probably like have a look in, like, because everyone's different on a case-to-case basis on getting into uni, and like we don't know how the outside lives may affect their attendance or how early or how late they show up to a lesson. But I don't fully know how we should tackle this, so I feel like it should be put to a lot of people, and it shouldn't just be one person's opinion on this is how it should be. It should be a group of people deciding, hey, maybe this is the way we go, have a trial of it, see if it actually works, and if it doesn't work, fix it.
I think that if the faculty or the university were to run this campaign and they're trying to hold students to account for turning up late, then what about lecturers who turn up late? What about lecturers who don't even turn up at all and email after everyone's already turned up for the lecture? I think that, you know, if you're going to try and hold students to account, then how do we hold the faculty and the staff to account for the same sort of thing?
I completely agree with Amanda. I think it's a mutual thing between students and the course leaders, because from personal experience as well, there has been times where we as students have been let down by our lecturers, and I think there needs to be something implemented where students are listened to more when we do say to our course reps and we go through the proper procedures and say, you know, this is not okay. But you know, if you're going to start disciplining students for turning up late or being disruptive, equally lecturers' behaviour is also disruptive. So I completely agree with Amanda. We have to find the balance of accountability.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, like, it's a bit tough for like saying to disciplinary measures for a student who turn up late, because there's a lot of factors to consider why they turn up late in the first place. If it's just a case of, oh, they couldn't get out of bed, or I just needed to pop down to Costa, get my morning coffee first. Sorry about that, guys. Then, yeah, it is kind of a bad thing to do. But then again, there's people that commute. There's people that take the guided busway in. And Lord knows those buses just run at a random level each time. You can never time them. There's also trains and stuff. It's not everyone at Anglo-Ruskin who attends the seminars and lectures can quite time it. So there are some measures like for people who turn up late, but there's also ones that, as long as they're like sorry, I'm late, and go to the back of the classroom and be quiet, then I don't think they really quite deserve as much punishment, if any at all. Because I mean, definitely it's better to enforce people turning up on time, and if it's a regular occurrence, then something's got to be done about it. But we can't just punish people for outside factors for it.
Thank you.
I think with some things it could be dealt with by communication. Like if students are in contact with their like personal tutors, and the tutors are like kept aware of certain situations. Like some students, they might have other commitments or they might have responsibilities. They might be like a parent or carer, and sometimes like it might be recurring that they're late, but it's not that it's like their fault. But they always try to come in, they always do all the work and everything. But it really just depends on the kind of student, and it's worth just both students and lecturers like making the effort to communicate like regarding different situations. Because I know sometimes that there's some things you can't really plan, or some like for example, someone might have had an emergency like hospital appointment, and then they might not have been able to make a deadline. But if there's communication with the lecturers, with the department, then something could be sorted out. So I feel like a lot of it's just starting a conversation between lecturers, students, and the SU, and seeing how it could be sorted out. Because obviously not every student is the same as well.
Thank you. Alex, if you respond, and then we will take a final question.
Thanks. Yes, I agree that there must be a balance, but what I would say is if there's dialogue to start with, if it's something that can be prevented rather than addressing the sort of the issue when it's been happening or reoccurring, then I would say at the start of each academic year, for example, or when you start a module, I would say it's in the interest of the university that the lecturers say, please try to come, be aware of this and that, being timeliness or, the noise levels and so on. So I think that's important. If, however, there are people who continuously behave disruptively, they disrupt their colleagues during the seminars, or they do silly things like mobile phones, I think they should be disciplined, yes, because we're all grown-ups, we're all over 18, and studying is not a privilege. It's something that you should work for, in my opinion.
Thank you. So go on to the final question. I won't return to the first one because we've spent a good deal of time talking about that, which I think was a great discussion. Thank you. One thing what I want to ask is, currently, of course, as an officer, you would represent not just undergraduate students, but also postgraduate taught and PhD and research students. And currently, our PhD students here are not able to access the Hardship Fund. Do you believe that PhD students should be able to access the Hardship Fund, even at the cost of reducing the money that's available for undergraduates?
I'm going to put my hand up, admit I don't know what the Hardship Fund is. So could I have a quick explanation of what that is?
Of course. So the Hardship Fund is a fund that students can access in terms of financial troubles. It might allow them to have a small bursary allocated to them, potentially interest-free loan that they would pay back as well. But so the availability of it is for students who can demonstrate a need.
I would like to start ahead and say 100%, just because I believe ARU is different to most universities. There is an air of elitism about most universities, apart from ours isn't. Ours is about equality. And I think if people have got to the point where they are doing their PhDs and they are, they don't have the funding, then why should they be missing out? Just because they might not come from a certain wealthy background. I think that's, personally, I can vouch that I don't have this kind of resources that other people might do. So I think it should be a state for everyone to enjoy. It shouldn't be based on anything. If you've got to a PhD level, then good for you. Yeah, 100%.
Well, I was just going to say we're all students. We all deserve equal opportunities.
Yeah, I was literally going to say students are students regardless of what stage they're at. Why don't we all get the same thing?
Yeah, same with Crick students. Crick students especially. Like, they should have the same resources and they should have access to the exact same things that we do. I know some Crick students don't. And it's bad. Okay? It needs to change. Anyone want the mic?
I'll take it. Okay.
Tom and then Alex.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I had to think about that question for a little bit because I'll admit as well, I didn't know what a hardship was. And honestly, I kind of think, everyone kind of deserves just some sort of financial support with it because, not everyone's financial situations are the same. Some people have families. Not everyone that comes to university is always in a good place or good financially wise. And even doing a postgraduate course, it's still a course at university. And if you've earned your way to it, then you deserve to pass with it. You don't deserve any drawbacks, any holdbacks. Just university should just try and help you as much as it can. And I understand that might put a little bit less with undergraduates, but that said, that's more we support each other, and that's a way I always believe in, supporting each other.
We've about 1 minute left. Alex, if we can take your comment, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. I totally agree with Molly. I think that the Hardship Fund should be shared with all students, including PhD students, because one assumes that they've worked hard to get there. However, there are lots of undergraduates who don't have the financial means like others would do. So You need to find a balance, I think, but definitely yes.
Thank you very much. We're just going to have to stop there for time. We did have one other candidate who wasn't able to join us tonight for this position, and that's Rebecca Page-Wright. Please check out all the candidates' manifestos online. Keep commenting and sharing the live stream. We're going to get ready for the round in about the next 5 to 10 minutes, and you will meet the candidates who are standing for Business and Law and the Health, Education, Medicine and Social Care faculty. What do you think they should debate? Let us know in the comments. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Welcome back to the Big Candidate Debate. If you're only just joining us, then this event is your chance to get a deeper insight into the students who are standing to be your full-time representatives during the election 2019. Of course, you get to decide, and voting will open next week, so this is your chance to hear a little bit more about what the candidates believe and why you should vote for them. My name is Rose Guy. I'm a staff member here at the Students' Union, and I'm continuing to be the host for this evening. We are continuing to pose lots of interesting, I hope, controversial questions to our candidates during this debate. We are live, so you can always like, share, comment, and send in your own questions for the candidates to answer. Right now, we are going to be talking to the candidates who are from the Business and Law faculty and the Health, Education, Medicine and Social Care faculty. And then at 7:30 p.m. we'll be hearing from Science and Engineering, and at 8 we finish with the candidates standing for President. As always, don't forget to get involved, and we will look at your comments and send them over to our candidates when we can. So to start, we would like our candidates to just introduce themselves.
So hi, I'm Fraser. I'm the current Vice President for Health, Education, Medicine and Social Care.
Hi guys, and I'm Mary, and I am the current Vice President for the Business and Law faculty.
Thank you guys. As you know, a huge number of our students are required to take placements while they're studying. Some of these placements are short-term and some of them are for much longer. This can obviously cost students a good deal of money on travel, parking, and other costs related to going on placement. Do you think ARU should reduce funding on something else in order to help subsidize placement travel costs? And if you think they should, what should they cut?
That is a very good question.
I don't necessarily think that they should cut anything to support these students. If their opportunities are going to be there for the students to get involved in, I feel that the university should look at innovative ways to support these students. You know, for example, look for placements that are ideally maybe close to where they're from maybe. So if you've got some commuting students and they're, you know, not that local to the university because they commute in, looking for a placement that maybe is closer to them. So that also helps. But also looking at other ways to support them or letting them know about the support that we currently have and the funds that are available. That I think it's evident that not necessarily all students know what they can apply for, and in terms of funds, they can, you know, I feel that there's other ways we can support them without other students having to lose out.
So one of the things that I've picked up this year is that, particularly with paramedics, they don't actually have access to any NHS bursaries, which does highly affect their sort of travel costs to and from placement and the university. So I think it's not so much looking at cutting anything, but it's re-evaluating how the university approaches the issue of hidden costs. Like, not even for placement students, like you're looking at students that have to purchase books, equipment. This is like beyond just placement students, and it's a question of how do the university target this? Because £9,000 per year and having to pay the extra stuff is a lot for students who've just come out of school, most likely. So it's a case of using the Hardship Fund, the Learning Support Fund, and actually publicising it, supporting students with the process. Because at the moment, students just apply, then hope they get lucky and have it approved. But I think the university itself could do a lot more to support that. And like one of the things I am currently looking at and want to continue looking at is how we can explore this as a wider issue to support our placement students in all faculties.
How would you propose that the university better advertises, or as you say, promotes these opportunities?
So if I think one of the issues that we particularly had this year was that the Learning Support Fund got temporarily cut off while they was looking through other documents, but this wasn't communicated to students. And during the Christmas period, the process was changed from, instead of applying for funding at the end of each block, they changed it to monthly. So students studying in November who came back in January couldn't apply for the November fund back. So it's a case of using the technology and resources that we have, whether it's email, Facebook, even Canvas. Like, students use it all the time, and all it takes is just a message to say, this is what's happening, big notice, this is what we're changing. And also use the students in these processes. like if the university is going to make major changes that can impact students, ask the students, because it's their education, their future, and it's their money.
Yeah, I agree with that, Fraser. But I also think that when students go on to placement or are currently in placement or coming off placement, the communication there could be developed more. So if you're on placement that may be local, or some of the placements, and we do semesters where you can go for an exchange, and some of that are in different countries, we still need to make sure that communication is there, and that the transition back into, let's say, on the home campus, is supported as well. I think with this, enhancing the communication links to the funding side slightly, in terms of letting them know what funds that we have available, or letting them know if there is big changes that are made, or if there is faculty changes that are made. Also if they want to make any cuts or even introduce something new, I think that the student voice should be more part of this, and they should find out what the students really want, because they're the ones that are going to be impacted the most by it. And if a faculty is going to marketise certain courses that you have to have a placement, and then employers are like, you have to have experience, then I feel that universities should support that if they're then going to promote it, and then or not take students on a course that they know that the support's not going to be there. I don't think that's fair, and it's not doesn't make the it doesn't support anyone. So I think.
Thank you. I'll move on to another question. Thank you both for your answers. Recently, there was another university that introduced LGBT plus only halls for their students. Do you have any thoughts on this and what the pros and cons would be? Do you think it's something that ARU should implement?
I think, particularly with an issue like this, it is a very fine line, and it's very important that we get something like this right, because with anything, there are always pros and cons, because on one side, this could be what the students who identify as LGBT want, but at the same time, we've worked so hard to not isolate them. We want to make them part of the everyday life of a student. So it's something that would need a lot of consultation, particularly from the students, particularly those who do identify. And then it's a case of, because it may not be as simple as let's just make LGBT only halls. It could be a way of making it embedded into current halls, so they have their space, but it's not a complete isolation. But it's a very tricky conversation to get right, and it's something that would take a lot of conversations with the right people to get right. Yeah,
I think for me, it I look at it from the perspective of trying to bring the community together, and to avoid the isolation as much as possible. And that particular university, the culture-wise, could be completely different to ours. So for me, it's really hard to compare the two. I would put this out to students and have their say and see what they want. I would, if it was coming that as an issue that they felt isolated, then I don't think putting them in a situation that could increase that may not solve the problem, but actually looking at if they're feeling that they want that a community to be built more, then why don't we use the resources that we already have? Why don't we put on more meetups? Why don't we host events that they request, but base it on the student and speak to them and being like, what could we do to make you feel more part of the community, and what would you like out of your student experience here, and how would you like to live in halls? I mean, if it comes up in the current rent survey that we had, and if it was a demand, I'm saying if, because we don't fully know, but if it was a demand, that's something that we'd assess. But again, as Fraser mentioned, it's something that would take a lot of consultation, and I think we'd want as much student voice as possible to make sure this is what they really want.
Okay, thank you. Returning slightly to question 1 about the costs, obviously, for placements and finding innovative ways to fund costs. One of our viewers has just suggested that what if we cut senior staff salaries? And I wonder how you would respond to the reduction of senior staff salaries, for example, the Vice Chancellor, in order to facilitate more of those bursaries and funds that are available for students.
That is an interesting comment. I don't see the problem in evaluating where money is spent and how money is effectively used. I am all for looking at a variety of things that we spend our money on and where it could be better placed. And looking at, I suppose, if money's going on certain job titles and wages, okay, so what responsibilities do they have and how do they enhance the student experience? And, you know, what are they doing to support students? Or even if not, just other things that we spend our money on, being like, is that really having the impact? You know, does someone's wage have to be cut? Is there something else that we could do? Or even if it is, I'm open-minded to have those conversations. I find that very interesting.
Fraser?
On a personal note, like, I'm down with that. Like, like if you look at some different universities and how much senior staff make, it's ridiculous compared to how much students struggle and how little is put in towards student support funding. So I'm absolutely out for that, but particularly in our position, we have to think about it more reasonably.
Sorry, when you say our position, can you clarify what you mean?
As a vice president, where we work so close with the union and the university, there are considerations that have to be made, how this could impact the staff. Like, if there's to be cut in wages, how would this impact staff? How would they react? Would they lose their job? Would they strike? Would they just throw a wobbly? So we need to make sure that any change that we do doesn't come back and essentially bite the students in the butt.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to introduce a new question now. Some of the comments that we're receiving may come back to the old questions, but that's fine. If we have some time, we'll revisit them. The university is talking about introducing a 3-day week timetable for students in a few years. Would you support this? And I suppose if you could particularly answer in terms of both the student body and your faculty.
I think, particularly in my faculty, a lot of our students, particularly our new medical students, do work a lot of Monday to Friday long days. I think if this implementation was done correctly and students were discussed, because obviously with a lot of courses, 3-day timetables will lead to a lot more longer days. But if students are willing to have longer days, but still have like a couple of days off either side of the week, then I don't see why not. So it's a case of making sure that if the decision is made, it's done right and works around the students.
Yeah, so for me, there's a lot of factors to consider, because it's a huge culture change to go from a variety of days. I know from studying here, my course had been up to 4 days or sometimes more. And, you know, it would be like, so if you're going to cut the days, what does that mean in terms of assignments? And what does that mean in terms of, you know, teaching time? And if you need support, and have they considered students with needs? And, you know, as we were saying, if that means days are longer, what about those commuting students or students that may have transport that might not run till later in the evening, or looking at needs for, or you know, needs around those students. Would this make this less accessible to them if with any needs around disabilities, or any needs if you know, with children and stuff like that? The flip side, it could improve that, because it's going 3 days a week, you've then got those 2 extra days to work, to study. I think it really depends. Looking at my faculty, my concern would be our workloads, because from being a former master student here, you know, I was typically in teaching 3 to 4 days a week on average, and I had so much work on top of that as well. You know, I'm thinking if they're going to cut the days, how are they going, you know, looking at assignments and looking at assessments and the amount of teaching time and that, you know, and the way that they use the student dashboard, and how that, you know, all that would have to change. You couldn't, you know, and what happened if a student was then off sick or something happened and they miss a whole day, could be like missing a whole week. I think there's a lot of consideration there, and I think I would be in support of this, as long as looking at all different areas of how will this impact everyday students.
If I just make one more point, so like particularly my faculty, it's a case of looking at like parents who have childcare needs and have to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning, pick their kids up at 3. And it's also a case, if you're going to change the timetable to 3 days a week, it could work, but with the other days, it's important that lecturers also are available. So if students do need that extra help, that they are available and don't succumb to, thank you for your email, I'll reply within 3 to 5 working days, because for a lot of people that just doesn't cut it. So we need to make sure that the resources are there to support them.
This is a great conversation, and we were getting quite a lot of comments from the viewers. Thank you very much. Keep bringing those in. Some of the comments that we're receiving, you guys have addressed the commuter student, and which I think a lot of our commenters are concerned about. But we also have a comment that brings up the community aspect. Actually, we've had a couple of them. And one of the questions is, how would you integrate keeping Wednesday afternoons free, if you feel that should still be kept, and would it be necessary if students had a Monday and Friday off, or a Monday and a Wednesday off anyway? And if you don't feel that would be effective, so if you, how would you propose building a community with a 3-day class schedule?
So I was a community student myself for the first 3 years when I was at university. And again, with this, a lot depends on the type of individual you're talking about. Because where I came from, sort of straight from school, I was looking for that extra sense of community. So to keep Wednesday afternoons free worked for me, so I could join some of the sports teams. But going back to what I said within my faculty, where a lot of our students were mature students, the same rules may not apply to them. They may have other sort of requirements elsewhere that mean they can't be on campus. So I think it's working around their requirements and also the timetables to make sure that we are holding events for all these different demographics of students.
Yeah, I think for me, as I revert back to when I first commented, it's a big culture change. It'd be a little bit of a culture shock, really, changing into this, and being, as someone that was quite heavily involved in sport and was in sports teams, the university would have to look at what their priorities are, and if they're going to have the 3-day week, how will that place that? Because I think fitness and sport and extracurriculum in general is important, and I feel that that would need to be looked at and addressed, because in my opinion, I support the keep Wednesday afternoons free, but that's, my bias from coming from a sports background. So I was, like Fraser, quite involved in activities like that. I'm
afraid we're going to have to stop there just because we're running out of time. Thank you both for all of your answers. The other candidates that weren't able to come and join us for this debate were Jack Fairhurst and Alex Mead, who are both standing for Vice President of Business and Law. Don't forget, you can find all the candidates' manifestos online at angliastudent.com/election. Please keep commenting and sharing. We're going to take a little break, and we'll be back in about 5 to 10 minutes, where you can meet the candidates who are standing for Science and Engineering. What do you think they should debate? Let us know. Thank you. Welcome back again to the big candidate debate. Of course, if you're just joining us, this is your event to talk to the candidates, ask them some questions, and figure out who you want to vote for in the election 2019. You get to decide, so let's find out what you think of these candidates. My name is Rose Guy, and I'm a member of staff at the Students' Union. I'll be your host for the evening. We have the candidates now for the Vice President of Science and Engineering. And then, of course, next we have the big one. We've got the candidates standing to be president. As always, please get involved. Comment on the post, share, like, send us your questions and comments. We had some great ones last time, so thank you so much to everyone who sent them in. But we'd like to start by letting the candidates introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm going first, I guess. I'm Hashim. I'm a third-year civil engineering student and the current course rep for civil engineering, BEng.
Hello everyone, I'm Dan Rice. I've been at ARU for 4 years and I'm currently studying life science.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm a master's student and I'm studying forensic science.
Hi there, my name is Julia and I'm doing a master's in animal behavior.
Hi, I'm Lynn and I'm a second year psychology student.
Thank you, everybody. So we'll get stuck into the questions now. So every year our officer team undertakes a SU team priority campaign. If you guys were all part of the new team together, what do you believe collectively should be the priority this year? For those of you who don't know, this year our priority was rent and the previous year was mental health. Do you think it should be one of those or something else?
So I can say that definitely mental health again, because it needs to be brought up again and again to make sure that, because every year we have a new intake of students, so we must make them aware every year. That's a big thing, and draw attention towards the resources that the university provides and the help they can through the SU, through the counseling team. So I think it's very important that this topic keeps coming up again and ensuring that people understand where they can receive help, where they can go if they're feeling down or something. So I think it would be very good having mental health.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think mental health is constantly underestimated in education and it really needs to just constantly be brought back, especially with changes in legislation within the government and the NHS. I just think universities should constantly be looking at it.
I will say I do agree with both of your opinions, points there. I do believe that mental health is a huge factor we should be constantly discussing. But I feel as a team effort or point for the year, I don't think it should come back again. If there is another campaign on the side, all about mental health, fantastic. I remember seeing, let's be honest, things around in the past year, so that's been a huge thing that I think should continue. But I feel like the efforts of a team such as the executives could be placed into furthering a more progressive area, because mental health is more, I believe, rather than a executive thing, it's more the professionals. We can only do so much, sadly, but I think it's best to always seek help if you need it. So as a team effort, going back to the question, I would more say we look at costs whilst at university, and in fact reducing those, and actually seeing where we can support students with costs.
I agree with what you said, Dan. And aside of that, I would like to raise the problem of international students and potentially find other way to make them be heard and feel part of the community, because it's a very huge problem, especially with people commuting as well, who do not feel part of the uni experience just yet. And it could be improved in certain ways.
Lynn, I'll give you a chance to respond and then I'll have a follow-up question.
Yeah, I think I agree with Hasim and Claire that mental health is still something that needs to be a priority. And I know Dan said, it's about accessing the professionals and accessing the support that's there. But actually there isn't a lot of accessibility for the support. You know, if you're not available at certain times, then you don't. There is no support. So yeah, I would want to see mental health brought to the fore, and not just for the students, but I think that our vocational students need to have that raised as something that they take forward into their careers. You know, it's not something that you just kind of is just for the students, but it's about taking it forward and you know, making things better for the next generation.
That's really interesting. Thank you very much. Obviously, part of the question is how do you decide on this being your team campaign? 3 out of 5 of you are interested in mental health. Do you think that there's a way to move forward as a team that would allow you to agree, or for those of you that wanted something else, how would you make your case for the campaign that you would do?
I think the answer to that question would be delegation and discussion between the team. Communication is a huge part of actually working through many issues, especially in life as well, in a career and such. And I believe that if we can have clear communication and clear-cut deadlines of when we want things done or when we'd like to enact certain things, then I believe that we could possibly do all that we've mentioned, including having mental health as a priority as well as the other points that we've raised today.
I agree. Like Dan said, communication is inherently important within a team, and not just between the team, but between the SU and the university and its students. I mean, ultimately, we are representing the students. We need to know what they want, and if mental health is something that they want brought forward a bit more, then we take that into consideration. But if something like costs or the international students is like a wider problem, we just don't see it as often, then that should be brought forward as well.
Take just a couple more comments on this and then.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with Dan that communication is a big thing. You know, there's nothing to stop us from working together as a team and supporting each other to produce all our campaigns. Yeah, and ask the student body if there's anything else that's their priority. I think that's the big thing. It's not about what we want; it's what the student body wants.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the points being made. That communication and delegation are very important through the whole structure for obviously making something a priority in the SU. And I'll also agree with Dan here that saying that mental health is a issue, but it's an ongoing one. So we could perhaps focus on, like you said, cost while at uni and have that continuously going on in the background, which would be quite something to look at.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next question. Also, thank you to everyone who's been commenting. I think the next question may follow on from one of the comments that we've received. Students from your faculty often struggle with getting access to facilities and buildings to complete their assignments during evenings and weekends. Is it more important to fund 24-hour access for the students who are using these specific facilities out of hours or late at night? Or do you think it would be money better spent to fund online downloadable content or specialist software that students could use at home?
So,
Julia, you seem ready to go. Go ahead.
I think it is very important to take into account the structure of the courses and how, you know, the demographics of the student, because in my personal experience, I see a lot of people who do not necessarily know how to use technology in the same way that we use it. So before thinking about that, it might be useful thinking on raising awareness and showing how to use certain devices or softwares. And then maybe the money could be spent on that. Yeah.
So I'd just like to make 2 points quickly. One is the Study Skills Plus program that the university offers, and greater awareness should be clearly brought to that so people could learn to access those softwares. And the second one, as I said in my manifesto, is that making sure that software is available to use outside of the classroom. So I know on the remote desktop you can access, for example, HMS or HECRAS, which is a software I use for my course. So why can't they do that for other software, so people and students could access software through remote desktop, which I think would be a much safer and better way to go, especially with students in the Chelmsford campus. A lot of them are commuters, so they commute from Peterborough, from London, from all areas around the UK. So that's what I'd like to add.
Lynn, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I agree with Hasim. A lot of the software is available on the remote desktop. And I think actually having access to the premises for the people that are living in, those of us that are commuting, we can already ask student services for the help with accessing the software. And I think also we've got so many different bits of software. I know I found when I first started, there's this app and there's that app and there's the other app, and we've got so many bits of software that are just kind of disjointed. Quite often I'd rather just come in and do the work here, where I can access it all in one place.
This is actually a very important topic for me, as it's on my manifesto, as it is as for Hashim's as well. I think in regards to whether facility access or access to content in this debate would be which one's the more appropriate for funding, you'd have to then question whether if we do put that funding online, as Julia's rightly said, would it actually see a use through demographics? And if we do allow certain software, especially expensive licensed software, such as for the game developing course or computer game development, are we then going to see our university possibly charging students for using that? And is that going to create an additional cost for our students? So I do agree with what Lynn has said. I think facility access is a large thing. We've had great success with the Compass House so far, and I think we should really continue with that and move on to like the iMac labs for other students and other buildings as well, because on Chelmsford campus I'm aware there's issues there. So I think facility access deserves more funding.
We have had some, this is a very popular topic with our commenters, which is probably not surprising to any of you. I'm going to ask you a quick fire follow-up that we have had presented by the commenters. If you can answer in one sentence, it'd be really difficult, so here's your challenge. If you had to choose between extended access to specialist facilities in your faculty, so 24-hour access or out-of-hours access, which has a cost associated with it, and additional funding that helps support field trips and other things that also come as part of the hidden course costs for your faculty, which would you choose to support, and very quickly in one sentence, why?
Facility access. One word is very difficult.
One sentence.
One sentence. Facility access because.
If that's everything, you don't have to follow up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Facility access for sure. A trip is a one-time thing. Facilities are required as a daily routine for a student.
I would agree with facility access. Like Hasim said, the field trips are a one-time thing, whereas the access, you've got a lot more to do with independent learning, which is obviously a major part of university.
I'm actually going to interrupt Lynn there. I'm really sorry. But you've said trips are a one-time thing. There are a lot of modules that actually require trips to be able to be completed to fill out assignments. So we should bear that in mind.
Ben?
Yeah, I think 24-hour access, because as one of the earlier teams said, we were talking about access to hardship funds. And if there's a trip that you need to do and you can't afford to fund it, then there's hardship funds for that. there aren't hardship funds for 24-hour access.
Julia?
I just wanted to say, for the majority of students' sake, I would do 24-hour access. However, as Dan said, I recognize that in my course, for example, in animal behavior, people have been wanting more experiences on the field and field trips, but it would be probably restricted to specific courses.
Thank you. We're going to stick with the theme of money and finish with a question that has again come in from our commenters. With increased fees, students are entering more of a consumer mindset with regard to their studies. Do you believe students should be seen as consumers? And how would you ensure that students are getting value for money?
I mean, in a sense, that is true. And especially as an international student, we have to pay higher fees than local home students as well. And I feel as if to make sure that I get the most out of my money, to maximize, let's say I only have classes 2 days a week, and it sometimes makes me wonder if I could have classes more, so I could have more contact hours, make sure that I'm getting tutorage a lot more than I'm getting right now. So maybe, as you said, access to facilities 24/7 would mean that students see that their money is going towards somewhere, and less of a budgetary problem, more of a student requirement. And also on top of that, higher contact hours in the classroom, more access to softwares and equipment that many of the faculties might need, especially in the Faculty of Science and Engineering. We need a lot of equipment to make sure that we have the best equipment, the latest softwares, and things like that, so we can ensure that our money is being used in the course and given back to us through the teaching and access of these equipments and softwares.
I'm going to follow up that answer with a question, if that's okay. So obviously, as vice presidents, you will represent your faculty. How would you respond to the value for money question for a student from AHSS whose costs are minimal to the university? For example, a student in English literature who may not have specialist equipment that they need to access, and how they see value for money.
Okay, so for different faculties, it would mean something different in terms of money being allocated towards them, or them seeing a value of their money being returned to them. And I feel if it was someone who did English, maybe he or she would like that they got more access to, for example, they got to go on a trip to London and experience something there that's happening or pertaining to their field on the university's purse or something like that. Because I can't really answer that question, because I can only answer it for science and engineering. That's what I would have to say.
Julia?
I believe that students could be seen as consumers, but the way in which we look at it should change. As you said, it is important to see ways in which we could better our experience as students. And I also believe that we should be able to use the money allocated to us in ways that could help our learning. For example, for transportation, we could be able to use the card that we got. I can't remember the name at the moment. Yeah, the Books Plus. Transportation, not only specific equipment, but also books, stuff that we already have, but it could be implemented in other ways.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to respond?
Could you repeat the question? The original question.
Yeah, the original question was about the increases in fees and how students are seen and how students are entering more of a consumer mindset. Do you believe students should be seen as consumers, and how would you ensure that students felt they were getting value for money?
Students should most certainly not be seen as consumers in any way, shape or form. We are all individuals. We aren't here to be put items in front of us to look pretty and go, oh, I want that one, let's buy that one. We are here to go on a really thorough experience pathway with a career in the future for us. And I don't feel that with the university, if it did view us as a consumer, I feel like that would actually be detrimental to our learning. What was the second part?
Ensuring that students are getting value for money.
Ensuring they get value for money. That is actually followed up by most degrees are 3 years, except from those in HEMS, of course, who are here for quite longer. I feel that making value for money is making value for your time, because your time here is 3 years. It's very limited. For most of us, it is 3 years, of course. But it's limited time. You have to make the most of it. Working towards us, or having executives or vice presidents being put forward to make value on your time, I think would be very difficult for us.
Anyone else like to answer any follow-ups there? Respond to anything that's been said? Yeah. Go ahead, Lynn.
I think it's important that we find out what the student body want again, and I think it's important that we engage with the university executive and see how we can make the best value for people's money. But I do absolutely agree with Dan. We're not here to be consumers. We're not here to, if you don't feel a lecturer is right, you feed back through your course reps. You feed back through the feedback process. You don't sit there and go, well, I'm not going to come to this lecture because this lecturer just reads off the slides and it's a waste of my time. I think we need to make sure that people are getting more than just what's on the slides. But I do think that we need to engage with the executive.
Can take one more comment and then we'll have to wrap up.
Yeah, so ultimately it's the students who are paying, so it's the students who should decide where their money is going. If they obviously want better stuff from their lecturers or want 24-hour access to facilities, then that's where it should be going, not anywhere else.
Thank you very much, everybody. And we're going to have to stop there. Just so you know, other candidates who are standing for this position but weren't able to join us tonight are Siobhan Fuchs, Tavanga Magwenzi, and Erica Moyo. And you can find all of their manifestos online, as with any of the candidates. So please keep commenting and sharing, and we'll be ready for the next round in about 5 to 10 minutes. And we will meet the candidates who are standing for President of the Students' Union. What do you think they should debate? Tell us now. Thank you. Welcome back to the big candidate debate. If you're just joining us now, we've reached the final portion of the evening, which is our chance to talk to the candidates who would like to become president of the Students' Union. Of course, voting opens next week, so this is your chance to decide who you'd like to vote for, ask them some questions, and hear their answers. My name is Rose Guy, and I'm a member of staff here at the Students' Union. I'm going to continue to be your host for this evening. So now we have your candidates for president. As always, please keep commenting. We'll be able to send them your comments and share with them what you're thinking about what's going on in this room. And let's hear who they are.
Hello, my name's Matt. I am the current Vice President for Science and Engineering.
Hello, my name is Gerard. I am a third year construction management student and also a course rep for my course.
Hi there, I'm Ismail. I'm a course rep for my course, which is a postgraduate one, clinical psychology or foundations of clinical psychology.
Thank you. We'll jump straight into the questions. There might be a few more tough ones. Obviously, you guys are running for president, so we want to hear some of the tough answers. The SU has sometimes been described as so inclusive or exclusive. Are our non-minority students underrepresented, and does this need to be addressed?
I think this is something we would need to ask the non-minority students. This campaign's been great because it's been so focused on democracy. I say take that further, democratize more. If there are issues, field them, find out. To take this without getting that feedback first wouldn't do anyone any favors.
I agree with Ismail. I think to make unquantified statements like that really doesn't do any good for what we're trying to achieve here today. But then also, if that is the case, like Ismail said, we need to hear what you've got to say. We're here to be inclusive. We're here to make change, and that's why we've run for these roles.
I think one of the key roles of the union is to provide a voice for minority groups. So I think I take that as almost that we are doing a good job, because I think that is so much of what we should be doing, is representing our BME students, our LGBT students, all of those sort of liberation groups, to be called inclusive to the point where exclusive, I think it's almost a compliment.
So as a follow-up, this question is based on evidence that the Students' Union has been looking at over the past year. And this evidence comes both from anecdotal evidence, so students telling us in survey feedback, as well as statistical evidence, which demonstrates that the majority of our student body who wouldn't fit into minority roles, minority categories, is less than satisfied with the Students' Union, particularly in comparison to the minority roles. Does that change your answer?
I kind of want to respond to what Matt said. I take your point. We don't want a sort of, there's always, in any kind of, a complication of democratic institutions is the potential for mob rule. We do have to protect minority voices. However, there are growing concerns that also need to be addressed. Now, they need to be addressed carefully. Again, not in a way that we just count the numbers and just kind of equivocate that with significance, because then you lose the voices and interests of minority groups. But for example, I had someone write to me about the interests of male students. That it's a bit of a cliche, this statistic, but the fact that male students are flagging behind in higher education, they're not getting in as much. It's concerning that this data is now unsurprising and uninteresting. It's gone over without really any response from any institution that I can name. This blasé attitude, I can see why that would make someone feel, yeah, that the student union doesn't care about them.
I'd like to go on and answer your question, and I'd just like to say, like we said before, if that's the case and students are feeling that way, we'd like them to come and speak to us so we can find out how we can best help them, how we can approach this issue that the non-minority students are feeling that they're not getting the best service, because that means that the SU has now flipped on its head, because we're not here to only look after BAME students, black and minority ethnic. We're here to look after everyone in Anglia Ruskin. We're here to actually cater to the needs of those who need the help the most, and that's the students. and that's what it's there for. And if that's the case, and the statistics are there to prove it, then let's hear about it. Let's hear what your concerns are. Let's get a majority to speak about what the main concerns are, and let's fight to change those things so that everyone feels included, because no one should feel like they're unincluded, especially not in the SU.
Would you like to follow up?
It's not anything like groundbreaking. I think there is a piece to be done about how we can look at engaging students wider, but I think at the forefront we should still be looking at our liberation groups, basically.
I have one more thing to add. My interest as a candidate is primarily with students as an economic classification and with their power dynamic with the university at large and society at large. There are things that are in the interests of all students, and I believe that should be our main focus, is how do we get what we want and deserve from the university?
Can I just say something? I believe, and I think the way you're coming from, your viewpoint is commendable and is very strong. But then what my campaign is based on is looking at where students achieve. It's looking more at what we can do to take education to the next level. That's what I stand for. Because having been within this institution for so long, you know, you come to understand that we go to lectures and we've got facilities that we don't use. What I aim to give the students is deliver the 21st century, that, you know, we've got buildings that are going up in Chelmsford that are state of the art. Why shouldn't our lectures be state of the art? Why shouldn't we have things like where students can actually come, and if you can't attend, because we've got part-time students, we've got international students, we've got parents, you can actually watch the university lecture in a stream. You know, that's what I stand for, because I think what students need is a person that has been through the system. I'm not there to try and, you know, make wholesale changes based upon me as a person. I'm there for the student, and I think that's what we basically need, because when we look at it from an economic basis to try and leverage the university to get the best that we can get, what we're forgetting is that when we're trying to leverage, we're going to meet resistance, and resistance is a good thing sometimes, because where there's no struggle, there's no progress. But at the same time, there has to be a middle ground where we're not always just pushing and pushing and pushing, but where we have to have an understanding that the university and the student union have to work together for us to make it better for the student.
Could I respond to that?
Yeah, we'll take one more response, unless you'd like to respond. And then we'll go on to another question.
Okay, so I've been watching this debate, and what I've noticed in terms of these questions, what would you cut, things about budget, is that this is formed by the university setting the terms, and it speaks to a precedent with the way student unions and the NUS at large has been negotiating with, or failing to negotiate with, universities, because they're setting the terms. When we are asked things like, where should the budget go, would you split between this and this, we should reject the premise and say, more money, please. and negotiate from there at the very least. To understand this group as an economic one is so important. The institution we're dealing with is actually called Anglo-Ruskin Higher Education Corporation. You know, it's in the name. We have to see ourselves and recognise that we are an economic group that has some conflated interests with the university, but not all of them. And yeah, there needs to be some conciliation and cooperation, but if you start from where they want, then you've kind of already lost.
I think that leads really well into our next question. So if you do have a response, I think you'll be able to build it into the answer. The role of the Students' Union is often described as the critical friend to the university. Of course, the university funds the Students' Union to support students, run events, the advice service, which is independent from the university, the representation structures. Keeping all of that in mind, what do you think of the term critical friend, and what would you define our relationship to be, if you would disagree with that?
I have an immediate response, but would someone like to go before me, because I can really talk? Okay, so my first response to this is that the university shouldn't fund the student union. It should be taken from union dues like any other union. So long as the university funds the student union, it can only ever be a critical friend. It's got the union in a headlock. I'm very suspicious of any union that is so friendly towards the institution it's supposed to be negotiating with. As I said before, and as you very, very, appropriately raised, conciliation and cooperation is part of getting things done. But how is this institution going to lock horns with the one that's, in the literal sense of the term, patronizing it, the one that is providing it its funding? There is a clash of interests here.
I think that when it comes to student union and being a critical friend of the university, what the statement implies is critical friend. It means that it's there to analyze and make changes based upon the student's perspective. The fact that it's being funded by the university, I mean, for me, is neither here or there. The fact that actually really, really matters the most is that students have a voice. That's what really matters. And when we're to actually peel everything away, the role that we're here to go for today and what we're talking about now is really about how we can get students to engage more. How are we going to inspire? It's us that are sitting here going to inspire students to vote more, to come and address issues more. And because when we have students, we've got power. Because talking about critical friend and the rest of it doesn't do anything for us. What actually matters here is that we're inspirational, that we lead by example, that we don't only talk about things that don't matter, we actually show that we're human and change these things. Because we could be a critical friend, but then that critical friend could be a very powerful power if powered with the right amount of people. And that's why we need to get people more involved. It's nice that it is a critical friend. Yes, it is. And yes, it is funded by the university. But that does not mean that we're not a powerful organization right now. And we need to realize that regardless of what it's called, it holds a lot of power if we can get the right amount of people behind it.
Matt?
I think the term critical friend is an interesting one. I've always thought of the SU as more of a disapproving dad. We're related, but we kind of go along to their football matches or committee meetings or whatever. Kind of look on from the sidelines yeah, okay, but I would have done that differently. And we're almost there to go, right, okay, yeah, but next time let's do it like this. Let's make it better. Let's involve more students. Let's make sure there is a student voice here. At the end of the day, we are in a situation where capitalism has us in a sort of arm lock of paying for education, and we have inherently become consumers, and for that reason having student representation at every level is so important. So we need to be the disapproving dad, and we need to be the disapproving dad at every level, because we're paying, so let's have a voice.
Because this has, as you can probably guess, sparked a huge debate online with our comments, which is fantastic, but will probably feed into some of the next few things that you're going to say. So some of the comments that we've received are, for example, you wouldn't be able to do some of the things that are proposed if the university didn't fund you. Just for context, the university does give the Students' Union a large portion of funds in the form of a block grant, which allows us to do some of the things that we're talking about here: representation structures, community building, and the university is also required to fund us as part of the kind of union structures, just in the same way we're required to run an election to have a president who is a student who is the voice of the Students' Union. So with those things in mind that are happening in the comments, yeah, I suppose what are your responses to that? And if there was the potential of losing the funding and then losing the ability to do the things that we're doing, should we continue to challenge them more or maintain a balanced relationship?
So a lot of these are responses to my criticisms. Now, I'm not suggesting we change these things, but I'm suggesting that we acknowledge these fundamental problems and conflicts of interest. With regard to things that can be done and things that can't be done the way things are now, and some previous comments, I argue that a voice isn't enough. Collective action is what gets the goods. If you look at any other union, that's what works. if we're not going to be a union, maybe we should change our name.
I think what you're basically saying is that's a requirement. I mean, in a real world, if we were a union, like a trade union, but it's a student union, it is university funded, I think it's a good thing because it doesn't stop us from doing what we do. It doesn't put any caveats on what we can lobby against or what we can fight for. It actually gives us money to do those things, and it gives you the license to actually go out there and, you know, get people involved. And I also agree with you that, you know, a collective effort that can change a lot of things, and it's where we need to be, you know. And the comments that people are coming up with now, I mean, they're really good, and it's great that we've got this level of interaction with the people. And I wish that there was more interaction based upon the issues, and, you know, whoever wins this, I hope they can actually really inspire people to get out there, start talking more, start moving in the right direction of things that they want changed, and, you know, talk to your friends, do more stuff and bring it to us so that, you know, we can change it. And yeah, but in the case of the university funding us, I think it's a great thing because now we've got a voice and we've got money to just splash behind that voice. So it's a good thing.
What was the question? Sorry.
Sorry. So talking about the fact that the university is not only required to fund us, but that it is a way in which we're able to achieve the things that we can do. And your response to that?
Yeah, I think coming from someone who's been doing this for 9 months, I'm not very good at maths, he says. Having that funding from the university to do these fantastic things doesn't leave us in a position of less leverage. If anything, it gives us the opportunity to fund all these officer positions and fund campaigns for the part-time roles where students can challenge the status quo. We've had so many successes over the last few months from full-time and part-time officers that have had effectively been given money by the university to run these things and have taken that funding and gone, you're not doing a very good job, ARU, this is what we should be doing. So I think it's, like Gerard said, it's kind of neither here nor there. At the end of the day, we aren't, in my opinion, left in a position of less leverage because of the angle of our funding.
This has been a great debate, and I'm sure that you may have more thoughts, and I would urge you to share them as part of your campaigning. But I'd like to move on to another question. One of the questions that we received from our comments is relating to the fact that you're not only there as you know, someone to hold the university to account, but also you're there as the leader of a team of academic vice presidents. How would you, as a president, deal with conflict in your team?
When it comes to conflict resolution, I think the best thing to do is dialogue. And depending on how severe the resolution was to speak to people individually, and then if they're willing, as a collective. Because the number one thing that we need to understand is that in these roles, be working with different people. So the role of a president means that you have to be a people person and also make decisions and also calm situations. So how I would deal with it is really through dialogue and getting people to see the other person's viewpoint. Because sometimes when someone is talking to you, it doesn't mean that they're being confrontational with you. Sometimes it's the way they express themselves. And it takes someone else to explain someone else's point of view for you to understand it. So that's what I'd do. I'd aim to be the intermediary and try and get everyone to understand everyone's point of view. Because, I mean, we'd be a team at the end of the day. And that's what I want, regardless of how different we are, to work as a team.
I won't make any secret of the fact that this year's team have had some disagreements. Working together as an officer team is very difficult. But I think I've learned a lot about myself this year, and I've learned a lot about dealing with very strong conflicts in a workplace environment and how to deal with those and how if anything, how not to deal with those, because there were lots of things this year that I could have handled a lot better. So I think moving forward, it would just be kind of reevaluating on what I've been through this year, and how to kind of take those experiences forward.
So my approach to this would be, unsurprisingly, looking for sort of lateral consistency, seeing where people want the same things. What I can offer in this position is, with this critical structural approach, look for the places where the arguments and disagreements are actually, again, where the university is setting the terms, and can we renegotiate the terms of the disagreement?
Can I just say one thing? And just one more thing. I mean, as a leader, regardless of the disagreements and the arguments, we just have to remember that when we ran for this role as president, we ran understanding that we'd have to be the glue in the team. So it's just one of those things.
Right. I think we might just have another question coming in. Sorry, I'm giving it a second. Let's see. So some of the suggestions online, I appreciate that you guys have been all watching the debate outside, so you've been able to see what the other candidates have been debating, and some of the audience is really interested to know about how you would feel about two questions, and I don't know if we'll get to both of them, but the first one is about the value for money question that we had in the previous debate, and students as consumers, and how you would respond to the view that students are increasingly becoming seen as consumers, and asking for the value for money experience, and what you would do in the president role to respond to that.
I think that's a valid point to make, because as in the last debate when Hashim said it, that students are consumers. You look at the international students, you mean they pay more. You look at the students at work, they're doing this to get a qualification, and how I would look to actually add more value for money to what they're receiving right now from the universities is, like I said before, you know, bringing education into the 21st century and providing more facilities, because for international students, for students at work, students that commute, it's very important for them to have access to facilities, like they said. Also adding more things, because we've got access to a remote web viewer, I think it is, where we can actually go online and study from home, but then put more software on there. Make more accessible to the students, because it's not really going to cost the university that much. I mean, I'm not a person in the finance department, I'm not, but then those are things that I'd look to do. And how I'd look to do it is actually get the student support, because as Ismail said, you know, anything is achievable with enough clout behind you. And if we have the student support, we can do anything. And that's my view on everything, that, you know, we just need support and we can do anything.
I've been really excited to answer this question. I was hoping it would come up again. So Anglia-Ruskin is actually a bit more toward unique compared to other universities here. Most universities have been coasting on their monastic reputation while moving towards this consumer-focused mindset and approach. Anglia-Ruskin has been doing that a bit less. It's kind of honest about its consumer-focused approach. I don't like it. That probably doesn't surprise you, but I think if it's here, it's going to take larger social changes, political action outside of this union, the NUS. It's going to take more than what we can do here. So in the meantime, I think we run with it and try and make it work for us. Hold the university accountable like it is selling us a product. Give us more transparency on these products. It makes my skin crawl to call them that and act like that, but if that's what they are for now, while we're trying to change that elsewhere, let's, you know, act like angry customers. Demand more, get our money's worth.
What was the question again, sorry?
So we're asking about the question about value for money and students being viewed as consumers, and your response to that.
So when education is being paid for, obviously inherently a student is a customer. Fundamentally, in my opinion, education should be free, but it's not. I think as an SU, we should continue at every level to hold the view that education should be free, and do things to support that. It's kind of wherever that may be. I don't really know how else to answer that question. It's not really a question. It's a bit of a weird one.
That's fine. Yeah.
This actually raises an interesting point. So I was doing a bit of research before this debate, looking for issues of inequality around vice-chancellor pay and things like that, and this university's name came up quite a bit. But what really struck me was that who the media approached for comment were things like the University and Colleges Union, but not the NUS. I think this is indicative of something more problematic and large. If we want to see changes like that, I sure wanna. We're gonna have to throw, if we're not already, and if we are already to do it more effectively, we're gonna have to throw our voice behind certain political causes in larger society to help students. It can't just be internal. We have to support things that help us outside of us.
I totally agree. I think we definitely are currently doing stuff like that, sending, I think, 5 delegates to the NUS National Conference this year. That's kind of where we as an SU will have an opportunity to air and represent ARU on a national scale. And I think obviously the president, I don't know if you know, holds a sort of confirmed place on that at that conference. So whoever is elected into this role, that is kind of, it's a really good opportunity for that person to voice ARU nationally.
I'm glad that you mentioned UCU because that's actually one of the comments that we've received as well. We are going to run slightly over, not by long, about 5 minutes. We'll answer this question and then we're going to give each of you about 30 seconds to pitch yourself as president to end the debate. But the question that we've received is, of course, with the context that last year and the year before there was a lot of strike action by lecturers, not at Anglia Ruskin, but due to the pension schemes that lecturers were receiving and the devaluing of those, and UCU decided to strike because many of our lecturers were not affected by those pensions. Anglia Ruskin did not feel that effect. However, we know that it's something that plays on students' minds, particularly when it comes to cancelled lectures and teaching time. I'd like you to give a fairly quick response, if possible, just because we're running out of time, to how you feel you would respond to ARU lecturers choosing to go with a UCU strike on behalf of receiving better pay or benefits.
So I would like to make a quick distinction, especially in my line of reasoning, between the university as an institution, as a business, and its academic staff. To the academic staff who are striking, I say solidarity. I say unions should support each other. It's in our interest for the academic staff to have less precarious jobs. Academia sure has innovated in that field. We need to help them. If that happens to Anglia Ruskin, we need to help them, again, negotiate with the university as an institution.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am so behind any member of staff who does choose to take strike action. # students stand with staff. I think it is totally in our students' best interest to stand behind staff, having staff being unfairly paid, being paid on hourly rates rather than salaries. It's going to inherently reduce the quality of the education our students are receiving, and we want quality education.
What about students who are dissatisfied with a strike because they've missed teaching time, don't feel prepared for exams, or feel they've had mitigating circumstances for the grades they're receiving on their assignments?
Then I guess we would have to look at some kind of extensions on essays. Some kind of mitigation for that, but I think this is so much bigger than us as ARU. I think this is one of those issues that really goes nationwide, and we should, I think, especially within a presidential role, I think we should be thinking bigger than just ARU.
Yeah, I think I support everything that was said there. Within strike action, when it comes to the lecturers, we should show solidarity with them. And moving forward, now that we're talking about strikes and pensions and that, I think the university should also start looking at things like contingency for these things to happen for students, because it does affect them. And we represent the student after all. And if things like mitigating and going to speak to student services doesn't help in strike action, there should be something as a prerequisite that if this happens, you get an extension until this time. Depending on how long the strike was, if it was 2 weeks, you get 2 weeks more in your course. You know, that would only be fair, because if you're not in lectures, you can't be expected to produce a good quality of work or a good standard of work. I mean, it affects the students' grades. So we should be looking at something like that, and that's a very valid point.
Thank you.
I'll try and be quick. If anything, I think this being a problem demonstrates the dichotomy I raised earlier between the university as an institution and its staff and its students. The staff would understand why we weren't there, because we were on strike in solidarity with them, hypothetically. And if the university as an institution then rejects that, then again we have a larger problem. We have to recognize our opponent in this situation. So it's a problem. It would be difficult, but I think you have to ask yourself, looking back, where would you want to have been during this time? What would you have wanted to be doing? University and student politics should be a bit of a pushback against the consumerism. It should be about the little petri dish of politics and society that we have here, and the kind of world we want to build after university and beyond it. If we can't do things like that are a little bit idealistic here, then what hope is there for the rest of the world? I hope you have hope.
Right, so on that note, I think I'll give each of you about 30 seconds to make your pitch one final time about why you should be elected president. This has been a wonderful, spirited and exciting debate so far, and I'm sure it will carry forward into the next weeks of campaigning and voting. But I don't know who would like to go first. About 30 seconds to just say why you should be president.
Okay, I'll go first. 30 seconds. Right. I possess this critical structural view of the university and the union. Yeah, there are these cooked in things where the funding's there and it's a good thing, but knowing that it's a bit jarring. Understanding the nature of these problems is important. If you're going to go in with a term set by the university, you're going to find some middle ground that was nowhere near where you wanted to be. If you start with what you want, if you have to find middle ground, it will be closer to what you wanted. So don't vote pragmatically. Vote for me.
Thank you. Exactly 30 seconds.
I'm a simple man with a simple vision, and that's for a future for you. Not a future for myself, a future for the SU. What I'd like to do is I'd like to revolutionize the way that we look at university, the way we look at schooling. I want to address the issues that you have. Like I said in my manifesto, I want to see you, I want to hear you, because I am you. I'm a student here. And I'd like to affect change. I really would like to affect change. But the one thing and the one reason I ask you to vote for me is because sometimes people say like a president is a head or something. So as a head, I'll have ears to listen and a mouth to speak on your behalf. So vote for me.
Thank you.
I've already been in an officer role for 9 or so months. I've got so much institutional knowledge already. I've already built an assortment of really strong relationships within the university that I think will be a really powerful influencing tool when it comes to taking what students want and shaping ARU into a sort of better shape for the student experience. I guess just I will be that disappointed dad that everyone needs at their football game to kind of get them that little bit better.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, again. Brilliant debate. Really good to hear what all of you have to say. And thank you to everyone who's been out in the audience, sending us comments and questions. And that brings us to the end of our very first big candidate debate. Voting starts next week at 9 a.m. So you can go to angliastudent.com/vote. A reminder that you can also see all the manifestos at angliastudent.com/elections. And all I can say other than that is have a great evening. You guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Rose. Thanks.